The emergency alarm screamed through the monitoring station. Ambassador Jirko's 4 eyes snapped open as red lights flooded the command center. His insect-like body clicked and chittered as he scrambled toward the main console. The other council members were already gathering around the holographic display that showed a star system 20 light years away. What is happening? Jirko demanded. The technician's tentacles moved rapidly across the controls. Distress signal from Veltara colony. Ambassador. Multiple signals, all frequencies. The hologram shifted to show the Mayan colony. It had been a peaceful settlement just hours ago, with 4 million colonists from 12 different species living and working together. Now the image showed chaos, massive biomechanical creatures tore through the defensive shields like they were made of paper. The structures collapsed one after another while the creatures consumed everything in their path: metal, rock, and living tissue, all the same by the ancestors. Someone whispered as Zero watched in horror as the creatures moved with terrible purpose. They weren't just attacking, they were harvesting every piece of matter they touched, got absorbed into their writhing forms, which grew larger with each passing moment. Can we identify these entities? Jirko asked. The technician shook his head. Negative, Ambassador. They don't match any known species in our database. Their biology is unlike anything we've encountered. Another alarm sounded. Second wave detected. The technician called out. The entities are multiplying. They're using the consumed matter to create more of themselves. The council chamber erupted in panicked voices. Admiral Vexner, an amphibian with blue-green skin, pushed forward. How long until our peacekeeping fleet can arrive? 72 hours at maximum speed, Admiral. Unacceptable. Vexner slammed his webbed hand on the console. Those colonists will be dead in 72 hours. Don't we have anyone closer? The technician checked the stellar map. Negative, sir. All nearby fleets are engaged in patrol routes or diplomatic missions. The closest available force is the Zentari battle group, but they're 80 hours away. Jirko felt his heart sink. 4 million lives. 4 million beings who trusted the Galactic Council to protect them, and they could do nothing but watch them die. Send the evacuation protocols immediately, he ordered. Tell them to abandon the colony and flee to the outer system. We'll intercept them with rescue ships. Ambassador, they're trying. The technician's voice cracked. But the entities are targeting the evacuation ships first. They're cutting off escape routes. The hologram showed the terrible truth. Small transport vessels launched from the colony only to be swarmed by the creatures. The ships didn't explode, they simply stopped moving as the entities covered them completely and began to dissolve the hulls. This is a massacre, Vexner said quietly. Zirkos mind raced through options. Every calculation led to the same conclusion. They couldn't save these people, not in time, not with their current resources. The Council had always prided itself on maintaining peace through negotiation and careful military deployment. But these creatures didn't negotiate, they only consumed. The distress signal is broadcasting on all frequencies, the technician said. It's reached systems we don't have diplomatic relations with. Which systems? Jirko asked. The technician highlighted a region of space on the map. The uncontacted zones, Ambassador. Including the Sol system. The chamber went quiet. Everyone knew about Sol. The system containing Earth, the Class 12 Death World. The highest danger rating any planet could receive. A world so hostile that it seemed impossible for intelligent life to evolve there. Yet somehow humans had not only survived but thrived. The humans. Chancellor Krivox said with disdain in his voice. They declined council membership 20 years ago. They want nothing to do with civilized space. True, Jokal admitted, but they received the distress call. Perhaps nothing. Krivox interrupted. Deathworlders lacked the refinement for proper warfare. They would charge in recklessly and make the situation worse. Besides, their technology is primitive. They barely achieved faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. Jerkel wanted to argue, but found he couldn't. The human vessels they had observed were crude compared to council ships, built like weapons instead of the elegant design civilized species preferred when humanity made first contact. They had been polite but distant. They attended one council session, listened to the membership requirements, and politely declined. No reasons given, no negotiations, just a simple thank you. But we prefer to remain independent. The galaxy had largely forgotten about them after that. A strange species on a deadly world who wanted to be left alone. Fine by everyone else. Final transmission incoming from Voltara. The technician announced the hologram shifted again. Accomplished it again. Voltaran engineer appeared. His face was covered in dust, and his breathing was labored. Behind him, others screamed and ran. This is Colony Administrator Vulcan to anyone receiving this message, he gasped. We have 4 million colonists remaining. The evacuation has failed. These creatures are everywhere. If anyone can hear this, please. We need help. We need. The transmission cut to static then. Silent Jezirical felt something break inside him. 4 million voices silenced in an instant. The council chamber remained quiet. What could anyone say? They had failed the Great Galactic Council with all its resources and technology had failed to protect those under its banner. Continue attempts to raise the colony, Jerkel said quietly, and redirect all available ships. Even if we're too late, we must try. Yes, Ambassador. As the council members began coordinating the futile rescue effort, the technician noticed something on his console, a new signal, very faint, coming from the Sol system. He almost dismissed it as background radiation, but then he saw the message. Attached to it, simple, direct, imperfect. Galactic Standard. The technician's skin changed color with surprise. Ambassador, he called out. We have a response. From Sol. Jerkel turned sharply. What? What did they say? The technician read the message aloud, his voice steady despite his shock. Received. En route. ET of 43 hours. The council chamber erupted into chaos again. Some members laughed in disbelief. Others argued that it was impossible. How could humans cross 20 light years in 43 hours? Their ships weren't that fast, and even if they could arrive, what could they possibly do? But Jerkel didn't laugh. He stared at the message on the screen, at those simple words that promised something the entire Galactic Council couldn't deliver. Hope. He thought about the human representative who had visited the council 2 decades ago, a woman named Chun. She had sat through hours of debates and proposals with infinite patience, never speaking unless asked a direct question. Always polite but never warm, and when the council had finished their presentation on membership benefits, she had smiled, a strange expression showing teeth, and said something Jerkel never forgot. We appreciate the offer, but humanity learned long ago that if you want to survive, you can't depend on anyone but yourself. At the time, he had thought it was sad, a species so isolated by their harsh world that they couldn't trust others. Now, watching the Veltara system burn on the hologram, he wondered if humanity had understood something the council had forgotten sometimes. Survival wasn't about diplomacy or elegant solutions. Sometimes survival was about being willing to do what needed to be done, no matter the cost. 43 hours. Jerkel murmured to himself. 83 hours until they learned if humanity would save the colonists the council had abandoned, or if the humans would arrive just in time to witness another graveyard. Either way, the galaxy was about to remember why you never forgot about the species from the Deathworld. 41 hours later, Admiral Vexner stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Voltara die. The Council peacekeeping fleet had arrived 2 hours earlier, but they were too late. 87% of the colony was gone. The creatures, the analysts now called harvesters, had consumed nearly everything. Millions of tons of matter converted into more of themselves. Begin evacuation protocols? Vexner ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. Sir, we're detecting very few life signs, his tactical officer reported. Maybe 300,000 scattered across the remaining structures. 300,000 from 4 million, the admirals. Hearts ached. This was the worst disaster in Council history, and all they could do was save the survivors and run before the harvesters turned their attention to the fleet. Prioritize diplomatic personnel and Council citizens. He ordered, knowing how it sounded but following protocol anyway. Understood, sir. Then every sensor on the bridge screamed at once. Unknown vessels emerging from FL. The tactical officer shouted, 7 contacts. Distance, 50,000 kilometers. Vexner's skin went pale. Had the harvesters developed space travel? Were they about to lose the entire fleet? Identify those ships immediately. The sensors worked frantically. Then the results appeared on the main screen. The tactical officer's voice filled with confusion. Sir, they're not harvesters. Ship configuration matches Sol System registry. They're human vessels. Vexner moved to the viewport and saw them. 7 ships that looked nothing like proper starships. They were angular and brutal with armor plating that made them look like flying fortresses. No elegant curves or artistic design, just raw functionality. Weapons bristled from every surface. The lead ship was massive, easily twice the size of his flagship. Words were written on its hull in human script that the translator parsed. TCN's indomitable. Incoming transmission from the human fleet. Communications reported. Put it through. A woman's face appeared on the screen. She wore a military uniform covered in insignia, and her dark hair was pulled back tightly. Her eyes were sharp and focused. This was Captain Maria Chun, the same woman who had declined Council membership 20 years ago. Council ships. This is Captain Chun of the Terran Colonial Navy, she said calmly. Clear the engagement zone immediately. We're going weapons hot in 90 seconds. Vexner found his voice. Captain Chun, you don't understand the situation. These entities cannot be negotiated with. They consume everything organic and inorganic. We must evacuate the survivors and retreat. Chun's expression didn't change. Admiral, with respect, we understand perfectly. We didn't come here to evacuate. We came here to exterminate. Before Vexner could respond, the human ships moved, but they didn't move away from the harvesters. They moved toward them. By the waters of home, Vexner whispered, they're charging into the swarm. The tactical officer's console lit up with alerts. Sir, the human ships are launching smaller craft, hundreds of them. They're heading for the planet's surface. Vexner watched in disbelief as drop pods shot from the human vessels. They didn't use the careful descent protocols that prevented damage. They just fell straight down through the atmosphere at speeds that should have killed anything inside. What kind of madness is this? Chancellor Krivok's S-voice came through from another ship. They are committing suicide. But the humans weren't dying. The harvesters swarmed the human ships. Their biomechanical bodies covered the hulls trying to consume them. But the human ships kept moving. Weapons fired continuously. Not elegant energy. Beams but physical projectiles that tore through harvester flesh with brutal efficiency. They're using kinetic weapons, the tactical officer said in shock. And are those nuclear missiles? Vexner couldn't believe what he was seeing. Nuclear weapons were banned by council law as too destructive and inelegant. But the humans launched them without hesitation. Bright flashes erupted through the harvester swarm. Each explosion vaporized dozens of the creatures. Captain Chun Vexner called out, "Those weapons are prohibited under council regulations." Chun's face appeared on screen again. She was issuing orders to her crew but spared him a glance. "Admiral, we're not council members. And right now, I don't care about regulations. Weapons free on all targets. Activate Hellfire protocols." Hellfire protocols? What did that mean? Vexner got his answer moments later. The human ships released something into the harvester swarm, some kind of dispersal weapon where it touched the creatures. They began to burn. Not normal fire, but something chemical that ate through their biomechanical bodies like acid. They brought bioweapons, Krivok said with horror. They brought weapons designed to target living tissue. On the planet's surface, the situation was equally chaotic. The Council fleet sensors tracked the drop pods as they crashed into the ground near the last surviving refugee camp. Ambassador Jekyll watched from his command ship as the pods opened. Human soldiers emerged. They wore heavy armor that made them look twice their normal size. Each one carried weapons that were oversized even for their armored frames. And they didn't hesitate. They immediately engaged the harvesters, not with careful tactical positioning, like council forces would use, but with aggressive direct assault. They ran toward the creatures instead of away from them. Zoom in on Sector 7. Jekyll ordered. The hologram showed a human soldier, the nameplate on his armor. Reed Okafor, leading a squad into a collapsed building. Harvesters crawled through the rubble. The humans didn't slow down. They moved through the debris with shocking speed. When a harvester lunged at Okafor, he grabbed it with his armored hands and literally tore it apart. Impossible. The tactical officer breathed. The strength required to do that. They're from a high-gravity world. Jekyll said quietly, Earth's gravity is nearly twice what most council species can tolerate. To them, this is light work. The battle continued for hours. The council ships hung back, evacuating survivors when they could. But mostly they watched as humans did things that shouldn't be possible. They fought continuously without rest. Most species needed breaks every 2 or 3 hours for physical recovery. The humans had been fighting for 16 hours straight. Some had even stopped to eat rations while still in combat. They operated in atmospheric conditions that had killed Vel-Terran scouts. Toxic gases that should have shut down their respiratory systems. But the humans just adjusted their helmet filters and kept going. And then there was the music. What is that sound? Vexner asked his communications officer. It's coming from the human soldiers. Sir, they're broadcasting it through their armor's external speakers. The sound was harsh and rhythmic, nothing like council music. It was aggressive and loud with something the humans called electric guitars. The tactical officer pulled up the translation. The song is called Thunderstruck. He reported, it appears to be a form of entertainment from their culture. They're playing entertainment while fighting for their lives? Krivok said incredulously, but Jekyll understood he had studied humans when they first made contact. This wasn't just entertainment. It was psychological warfare. The music kept the soldiers energized and aggressive, and it told the enemy that the humans weren't afraid. They were enjoying this, Captain. Chun's ship moved through the harvester swarm, like a predator hunting prey. Whenever a harvester tried to attach to the hull, automated systems scraped them off. Not shields. The humans didn't use energy shields. They relied on thick armor plating and something Chun called regenerative hulls that could repair minor damage automatically. Admiral Vexna. Chun's voice came through again. You asked why we're doing this? Let me explain something about humans. The Admiral listened. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, the highest danger rating you give. We evolved dodging predators that could tear us apart. We survived ice ages, plagues, and a sun that tried to cook us alive. We didn't develop space travel because we wanted to explore. We developed it because we needed to survive. And now that skill set is your advantage. Vexener watched as another human squad eliminated. A harvester nest. They moved with precision and violence. No hesitation, no mercy. Just brutal efficiency. Captain Chun. Zirkle called from his ship. How did you know how to fight these creatures? We've never encountered them before. Chun's expression hardened. Ambassador, we've encountered them. 6 months ago, they hit one of our colonies. 3 million humans. Dead. We couldn't save them. But we studied every piece of data we recovered. We reverse-engineered their biology. We built weapons specifically designed to kill them. The tactical displays showed it was true. Every weapon the humans used was optimized for anti-harvester combat. The bioweapons targeted their specific cellular structure. The kinetic rounds punched through their armored shells. Even the nuclear missiles were calibrated to maximize damage to harvester neural tissue. This isn't a rescue mission. Zirkle said slowly, this is revenge. Chun's smile was cold. Ambassador, we call it justice. But yes, this is personal. The harvesters killed our people. So we studied them, we hunted them, and now we're gonna make sure they never kill again. Not our people. Not yours. Not anyone's. Around Veltara, the harvester swarm began to thin. The humans were winning, not through elegant tactics or diplomatic solutions, but through overwhelming violence and absolute determination. Lieutenant James Okafor dropped through the collapsed ceiling into darkness, his armor's lights activated, automatically revealing a nightmare, the underground. Tunnels beneath Veltara colony were supposed to be evacuation routes. Now, they were hunting grounds harvester. Drones scuttled through the corridors, their biomechanical. Bodies clicked and scraped against the metal walls behind Okafor. His squad landed one by one. Corporal Sarah Martinez hit the ground and immediately raised her. Weapon Private Chun, no relation to the captain, covered. The rear specialist Jackson secured their exit point. Motion. Sensors picking up multiple contacts. Martinez reported 20 meters ahead. Circular pattern. Nest site, Okafor confirmed. Rules of engagement. Nothing leaves this tunnel alive. Move out. The squad advanced through the tunnel. Their armor was heavy, but they moved with practice. Earth's gravity was 1.3 times what most species considered standard. To humans trained in Earth gravity, this lighter environment felt almost liberating. They could jump higher, move faster, carry more weight. The Council. Observers monitoring their helmet cameras couldn't understand, and Ambassador Zirkle watched from his ship as the humans navigated through passages that had killed Veltaran scouts. The atmosphere. Down there was toxic methane mixed with industrial chemicals. His own species would have been dead in minutes, even with protective gear, but the humans just adjusted their rebreathers and kept going. Contact. Martinez shouted. 3 harvesters dropped from the ceiling. They were fast. Council reports said they could move at 40 kilometers per hour, but the humans were faster. Martinez fired her weapon in controlled bursts. The kinetic rounds punched through the first harvesters. Carapace fluorescent blood sprayed across the wall. Okafor caught the second one with his armored fist. The impact should have broken his hand. Instead, the harvester's shell cracked. Okafor followed up with his combat knife, a blade half a meter long made from some earth alloy. He drove it through the creature's neural cluster. The third harvester tried to retreat. Jackson shot it through the back. Clear. Okafor called out. No survivors. Keep moving. The squad continued deeper behind them. More human teams swept through other tunnel networks. They were establishing a perimeter around the last refugee camp. 4 100,000 survivors huddled in the colony's central dome. The harvesters had surrounded them completely until the humans arrived on the surface. Captain Chun coordinated the ground assault from her ship. Her tactical display showed dozens of human squads moving through the colony. Ruins. Each team operated independently, but with perfect coordination. No wasted movement, no hesitation, just methodical. Extermination Admiral Vexner watched the same displays from his flagship. He couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. How long have they been fighting? He asked his tactical officer. 18 hours continuous combat, sir. That's impossible. Even the strongest species need rest cycles. But the humans didn't rest when they needed to eat. They consumed rations while walking, when they needed to reload. They did it in seconds without breaking stride when they were injured. They applied medical patches and kept fighting. Vexner watched one human soldier take a direct hit from a harvester's acidic spray. The acid burned through part of his armor. The soldier screamed, the sound that made every council member flinch, but he didn't fall, he didn't retreat. He stabilized the wound with some kind of foam that hardened instantly. Then he charged the harvester that had hurt him and beat it to death with his bare hands by the waters. Vexner whispered, "What are they?" Ambassador Jerkel had been studying human physiology since they arrived. He pulled up the data on his console. "They're survivors," he said quietly. "Look at this. Human bodies contain redundant systems. If one organ fails, backup systems activate. Their blood can clot almost instantly. Their bones can bear 10 times their body weight. Their nervous system can override pain signals when necessary." "That doesn't explain the aggression," Chancellor Krivox argued. "No civilized species enjoys violence like this." "They don't enjoy it," Jerkel countered. "They're conditioned for it. Earth spent millions of years teaching them that violence is sometimes necessary for survival. Every predator on their world reinforced that lesson. They learned to hunt, to fight, to kill. Not because they wanted to, but because anything less meant extinction." Deep in the tunnels, Okafor's squad reached the nest site. It was a large chamber filled with harvester biomass. The walls pulsed with organic material. Dozens of drones worked at converting captured matter into more harvesters. In the center, a larger entity coordinated the swarm, a node creature that served as a local command center. Target acquired. Okafor reported to command. "Requesting permission for scorched earth." Captain Chun's voice came through. "Permission granted." "Light it up." The squad deployed their payload, not regular explosives, but something specifically engineered for this moment. Bioweapons designed after months of studying captured harvester samples. The humans had learned how harvester cells replicated, how their neural networks coordinated, how their metabolism processed matter, and they had built weapons that targeted every weakness. The bioweapon dispersed through the chamber like mist where it touched harvester tissue. Cellular breakdown began. The creatures tried to flee, but the weapon was airborne. It found them all within minutes. The entire nest site collapsed. Tons of dead biomass that would never threaten anyone again. "Nest destroyed," Okafor reported, moving to extraction point. Across the colony, similar reports came in. Human squads eliminated nest after nest. They worked with terrifying efficiency. The council forces could only watch. A council liaison officer named Telva had been embedded with one human squad. He was a Velteran himself who had volunteered to coordinate with the humans. Now he stumbled through the tunnels trying to keep up. His breathing was labored. His suit's medical sensors showed elevated stress hormones. The humans around him seemed completely calm. "How can you do this?" Telva gasped into his communicator. "How can you fight like this without fear?" Corporal Martinez glanced back at him. Who said we're not afraid? Fear is how you survive. Fear makes you careful. Makes you think. We just don't let it stop us. They rounded a corner and found a group of Velteran. Survivors, 20 colonists, huddled in a storage room. They had been trapped. For 2 days, the humans immediately shifted. From combat mode to rescue mode, Jackson checked each survivor for injuries. Martinez established a secure path to the surface. Okafor called in an evacuation transport. You're safe now, he told the colonists in their language. We're getting you out. One elderly Velteran looked up at him, at his armor covered in harvester blood, at his weapons designed for killing, at his face behind the helmet visor. Why? The old one asked, why did you come? We are not your people. Okafor was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that Talva would remember for the rest of his life. Because you called for help. Because innocent people were dying. Because we have the power to stop it. That's enough. The survivors were extracted safely. The squad continued their mission on Captain Chan's ship. The tactical situation was becoming clear. The harvesters were losing, not slowly but catastrophically. Every nest site destroyed. Every command node eliminated. The swarm that had consumed 87% of the colony was being driven back. Admiral Vexner, Chun called out. We're preparing final phase operations. I'm uploading our anti-harvester protocols to your database. Every weapon we've developed, every tactical approach we've refined, every piece of data we've collected. It's yours! Vexner stared at his console as terabytes of data flooded in battle plan's weapon specifications. Biological analyses, countermeasures, everything humanity had learned about fighting harvesters. Why are you giving us this? The Aschon's expression was serious. Because the harvesters won't stop with one colony. They're out there consuming other worlds. We can't be everywhere. But if we share what we know, you can defend yourselves. You can protect your people. But this is military intelligence. Giving it away compromises your advantage. Admiral, we're not fighting you. We're fighting them. And this isn't about advantage. This is about survival. When predators threaten a herd, you don't compete with other prey. You work together, or you all die. Jericho listened to this exchange and felt something profound shift in his worldview. The Council had always hoarded military knowledge, protected technological advantages, maintained power through information control. The humans were giving it away freely, not because they were weak or naive, but because they understood something the Council had forgotten. Sometimes the best weapon wasn't the one you kept hidden. It was the one you shared. With OIs, as the 24-hour mark approached, the battle reached its conclusion. The last major harvester concentration was pinned against the colony's eastern wall. Human forces surrounded them completely. No escape, no mercy, no survivors. Captain Chun gave the final order. All units, execute termination protocols. The humans unleashed everything. Nuclear missiles struck the center mass. Bioweapons saturated the area. Kinetic bombardment from orbit pulverized anything that remained when the smoke cleared. Nothing moved. 400,000 Velteran survivors were safe. The harvesters were extinct on this world, and the galaxy had learned what happens when you threaten innocent lives and humanity hears about it. The discovery changed everything. Deep beneath Veltara's surface, human ground-penetrating scanners found something that shouldn't exist. A massive structure 10 kilometers down, organic and mechanical, merged into something unprecedented. The Hive. Cora neural network, coordinating every harvester on the planet. Captain Chun studied the scans on her command bridge. The structure was enormous, easily the size of a city block, pulsing with bioelectrical activity that generated enough power to register on orbital sensors analysis. She asked her science officer, The core is processing information at rates we can't measure accurately. Lieutenant Kim reported, every harvester on the planet is linked to it. Destroy the core and the swarm loses coordination. Admiral Vexener's face appeared on the communication screen. Captain Chun, our strategists have reviewed the data. The only way to destroy that structure is orbital bombardment. But that will kill everyone in the surrounding area. At least 50,000 colonists are sheltering within the blast radius. Chun didn't respond immediately. Her jaw was set in that expression her crew knew well. The expression that meant she had already decided something difficult. How long to evacuate those colonists? She asked. Minimum 8 hours. Vexener replied, the harvesters will have regrouped by then. They're already adapting to our weapons. It was true the harvesters were learning. The bioweapons that had worked so well in the first wave were becoming less effective. The creatures were evolving faster than anyone had predicted. Then we go in manually. Chum said. The bridge went silent. Her executive officer, Commander Park, spoke up. Captain, that's a suicide mission. 10 kilometers underground through harvester territory. No support, no extraction, no backup plan. I'm aware, Chun replied calmly. Which is why I'm only asking for volunteers. Anyone who wants to stay on the ship, no judgment. But I'm going down there. Someone has to. Every single member of her bridge crew raised their hand. With respect. Ma'am, Park said, if you think we're letting you go alone, you're crazier than the mission brief. Chun smiled despite the situation. Assembled a strike team. 30 people maximum. Full combat load. We go in 2 hours. Ambassador Jerkel watched the preparations from his observation post. He saw humans checking weapons with ritualistic precision, saying quiet goodbyes to friends, writing final messages to loved ones. They knew this was likely a one-way trip and they were going anyway. I want to go with them. Jerkel announced. His aide's mandibles clicked in shock. Ambassador, you're not trained for combat. You'll be killed. Probably, Jerkel agreed. But if I'm going to ask the Council to trust these humans, I need to understand them. And I can't do that from the safety of a ship. He contacted Captain Chun. Permission to join your strike team? I won't fight, but I can document everything. The Council needs to see what you do down there. Chun considered it. Your choice, Ambassador. But I can't guarantee your safety. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to let me witness. Suit up. We leave in 90 minutes. The strike team assembled in the drop bay. 31 humans and one very nervous insectoid. Ambassador Chen addressed them all. Everyone knows the mission. We descend through the mining tunnels to level 9. Then use demolition charges to blast our way to level 10. From there, it's a straight push to the core. We plant the payload, activate the virus upload, and extract. Questions? Specialist Jackson raised his hand. Ma'am, the payload won't explode. For 30 minutes after activation. How do we survive the underground blast? We don't plan to, Chum said bluntly. The explosion will collapse the entire underground network. Rescue is impossible. So we make it back to the surface before detonation, or we don't make it back at all. Silence greeted this. Then Corporal Martinez laughed. Well, that's motivating. Let's go kill a hive mind. The team moved out. They descended through the mining tunnels in combat formation. Every shadow could hide a harvester. Every sound could signal an ambush. The tunnels were tight and claustrophobic, perfect territory for an ambush at level 3. They hit resistance. Harvesters poured from side tunnels, not the smaller drones, but warrior variants. Larger, faster, deadlier. The firefight was brutal in the confined space. There was nowhere to dodge. Martinez took a claw slash across her chest. The armor held, but the impact cracked 2 ribs. She injected a combat stimulant and kept firing. Jackson's weapon overheated. He switched to his secondary weapon without missing a beat. When that ran empty, He used his combat knife, then his bare hands. When the knife broke, Lieutenant Kim triggered a shaped charge. The explosion vaporized 6 harvesters. The shockwave knocked humans off their feet, but they got back up. Ambassador Jericho watched in horror and awe. His camera recorded everything. The violence, the determination, the absolute refusal to quit at level 6. They found bodies, human bodies. A scout team that had been sent ahead days earlier. They were barely recognizable. Chun knelt beside them, checked their identification tags, made a notation on her datapad. "We're bringing them home," she said quietly. "Mom, we don't have time," Park began. "We're bringing them home." Chun repeated firmly, "No one gets left behind." They carried the bodies with them. Level 9 was a nightmare. The harvesters had reinforced it with organic barriers, living walls that tried to grab anyone who passed. The team used flamethrowers to clear a path. The smell was indescribable. "This is it," Chun announced. "Set the charges on that wall. Breakthrough in 30 seconds. The demolition team worked frantically. Harvesters swarmed from all directions. The humans formed a defensive circle. Back-to-back combat. Pure survival. Charges set. Everyone down. The explosion tore through the wall. Debris rained down when the dust cleared. There was a hole leading deeper into darkness. "Move! Move! Move!" They poured through the gap into level 10 and found themselves in hell. The core chamber was massive. Organic pillars stretched from floor to ceiling. Bioluminescent light pulsed through veins in the walls and everywhere. Harvesters, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "Contact!" Someone screamed. Then there was no more time for words, only fighting. The humans pushed forward through overwhelming numbers. Jackson lost his left arm to a harvester's mandibles. He cauterized the wound with his plasma torch, then picked up his weapon with his remaining hand and kept fighting. "I've got another one," he shouted to no one in particular. Martinez's leg was broken. She propped herself against a pillar and provided covering. Fire buying seconds for the others to advance. Lieutenant Kim was grabbed by 3 harvesters at once. She triggered her armor's self-destruct. The explosion killed her and everything within 5 meters. "Keep moving," Chun roared. "Don't let them die for nothing." Jericho had stopped filming. He had picked up a fallen weapon. He didn't know how to use it properly, but he pointed it at harvesters and pulled the trigger, and sometimes they fell. This was insanity. This was impossible. They should all be dead, but the humans wouldn't die. They were bleeding, broken, exhausted, but they wouldn't stop. There. Chun pointed to the center of the chamber, the core itself. A massive organic computer, pulsing with electrical activity. Neural clusters the size of buildings. Processing power to coordinated planetary. Genocide. Plant the charges. The demolition team sprinted forward. Harvesters tried to stop them. The remaining humans threw themselves at the creatures. Literally threw themselves, using their bodies as shields. Park went down. Then Rodriguez. Then half. The team, but the charges were planted, payload activated. The demolition specialist shouted, 30 minutes to detonation. Upload the virus. Chun ordered. Lieutenant Kim's backup took position at a data port, slammed the data crystal into the interface. The virus began uploading, code designed to broadcast across harvester neural networks. A digital poison that would spread to every connected core in the galaxy. Upload progress, 40%. A massive harvester variant emerged from the core, something the size of a transport vehicle, a command organism designed to defend the center. It charged at Chun. She didn't run. She raised her weapon and fired until it was empty. Then she drew her sidearm and kept firing. The creature kept coming. Upload complete. The technician shouted, "Everyone out." Chun ordered, "Get to extraction." But the giant harvester blocked the only exit, and there were still so many smaller ones. Shirkle saw what was about to happen. They weren't going to make it. They had succeeded in the mission, but they weren't going to make it. Out alive then, Chun did something that Jerkle would remember forever. She charged the giant harvester alone without weapons, just her armored fists and whatever was left of her strength. Captain. No! Park screamed, but Chun was already moving. She dodged under the creature's strike, got inside its reach, found a weak point in its carapace, and shoved her last grenade into the gap. Run! She shouted to her team. The explosion ripped through the giant harvester. The force of it threw Chun backward. She slammed into a pillar and didn't get up. Park grabbed her Martinez, dragged herself over. Together, they lifted their captain. Move! 22 minutes to detonation. The survivors fought there. Way back through the tunnel. Carrying wounded, carrying dead, carrying each other, harvesters pursued them. But something was wrong with the creatures. They were moving erratically, fighting each other. The core's destruction was already affecting the swarm at level 9. Rescue teams met them. Fresh troops who carried the wounded, cleared the path, got them to the surface. 16 minutes to detonation. 1 week after Veltara, the Galactic Council chambers were full. Representatives from 300 species packed the hall. The emergency session had been called specifically to discuss what the records now called the Veltara incident. But everyone knew what it was really about. Humanity Ambassador Jerkle stood at his designated position. His body still bore scars from the core chamber. The council healers had offered to remove them. He had refused. Some things needed to be remembered. Chancellor Krivox called the session to order. We are here to address the actions of the human species at Veltara Colony. This council must decide if humanity represents an asset or a threat to galactic peace. The debate began immediately. They saved 4 million lives. Ambassador Telva argued, his Veltaran voice emotional. Lives that we had written off as lost. How can that be a threat? They brought weapons of mass destruction into a populated area. Another representative countered. They used biological warfare. They showed no regard for council protocols. Because your protocols would have let everyone die. Admiral Vexner stood from his seat. I was there. I watched my own forces fail while humans succeeded. We should be thanking them, not debating their methods. Krivox's feathers ruffled with agitation. Admiral, you witnessed their violence. They don't just fight, they enjoy it. They broadcast entertainment while killing. They modified their biology specifically for warfare. How can we trust beings who are so comfortable with destruction? Because destruction was necessary. Jerkle said, his voice cutting through the noise. I went with them into the core chamber. I saw what they faced. I saw them die protecting others. 12 humans didn't make it out of that mission. 12 beings who volunteered to enter hell so that strangers might live. Don't you dare cheapen their sacrifice by calling it entertainment. The chamber went silent. Show them, Vexner said quietly. Show them what you recorded. Jerkle activated his presentation. Holographic footage filled the chamber. The council members watched in silence as the assault unfolded. They saw Jackson lose his arm and keep fighting. They saw Martinez with broken bones still providing cover. They saw Lieutenant Kim sacrifice herself to clear a path. They saw Chun charge the giant harvester alone when the footage ended. No one spoke. Finally, Krivox broke the silence. I see courage. I see sacrifice. But I also see danger. These humans are too effective at violence. What happens when they turn that capacity against us? Why would they? Telva asked. They shared their anti-harvester technology freely. They uploaded complete tactical databases to our systems. If they wanted to conquer us, they would have kept that information secret. Perhaps they're playing a longer game. The chamber doors opened. Every conversation stopped. Captain Maria Chun entered the room. She walked with a cane. Her left arm was in a regenerative cast, synthetic skin patches covered. burns on her face, but she held herself. With quiet dignity, she wore her dress uniform medals, covered her chest, each one representing actions the Council had never heard of. Battles fought in darkness, threats eliminated, before they reached civilized space. Humanity's long war against the universes. Cruelty, Captain Chen, Krivok said stiffly. You honor us with your presence. Though I must note, you were not scheduled to speak until I'm aware of the schedule. Chen interrupted politely. But I've been listening to your debate for 2 hours. And I think it's time someone represented Earth's perspective. Krivok settled his feathers. Very well. The floor recognizes Captain Chun of the Terran Colonial Navy. Chun stepped to the center of the chamber. 300 species. Watched her. 300 different cultures with different values, united only by their fear of what she represented. She took a breath and began. Members of the Galactic Council, you're debating whether humanity is too dangerous to trust. That's the wrong question. The right question is, dangerous to whom? She turned slowly, making eye contact with different representatives. You're right that we're comfortable with violence. Earth taught us that. Our world tried to kill us for millions of years. Predators hunted us. Diseases plagued us. The climate itself turned against us regularly. We learned that sometimes survival requires violence. That's not a moral failing, it's ecological reality. But that doesn't address our concerns. Someone began. I'm not finished. Chum's voice was sharp. You're afraid because we're effective at what we do. Because when we fight to win. But let me ask you something. When the Harvesters attacked Voltara, where was the Council's effective response? Silence. You debated. You calculated. You prioritized your own people over others. And while you followed your protocols, millions died. We didn't come to Voltara because of protocols. We came because beings were screaming for help across the void. And yes, we came prepared to do violence. Because sometimes violence is the only answer predators understand. She paused, leaning on her cane. You call Earth a death world. You're correct. It is. But what you don't understand is what that means. A death world doesn't just produce dangerous beings. It produces beings who understand the value of life. Because when every day is a fight to survive, you learn that life is precious. That it must be protected. That sometimes the only way to preserve life is to destroy what threatens it. Admiral Vexener was nodding. Zhirkol's mandibles clicked in agreement. The Harvesters took one of our colonies. Chung continued, her voice softer now. 3 million humans. We couldn't save them. By the time we understood what was happening, they were gone. So we studied every piece of data we could recover. We reverse-engineered their biology. We built weapons specifically designed to kill them. Not for conquest, not for power, but for one reason, so it would never happen again. To anyone. She looked directly at Krivox. You asked what happens if we turn our violence against you. Here's your answer. We won't. Because you're not harvesters. You're not predators consuming the innocent. You're civilized beings trying to build something better. And we want to help with that. But we won't apologize for having the capacity to protect what we build. Pretty words, Krivok said. But how can we trust them? Because we're giving you proof, Chum replied. Every weapon we developed, every tactical approach we refined, every piece of data about harvester combat, we've shared it all. Free of charge. No strings attached. If we wanted to use our capabilities against you, we would have kept our advantages secret. Instead, we're giving you the tools to defend yourselves. She moved closer to the Council's central platform. The Harvesters are still out there. Our intelligence suggests multiple hive worlds throughout uncharted space. They will attack again. And when they do, you'll need to be ready. You can be ready now because we showed you how. But at what cost? Someone asked, "You lost 12 soldiers in that mission alone. Is that sustainable?" Chun's expression hardened. "No, is not. Every human who dies protecting others is a tragedy we feel deeply. But it's a cost we're willing to pay. Because the alternative is watching innocent beings die while we do nothing. And that's a cost we refuse to accept." The chamber erupted into arguments again. Some supported humanity's inclusion. Others demanded restrictions. The debate raged for another hour finally. Jericho stood. "Honored council members, I move for a vote. The question before us is simple. Do we accept humanity as members of this council with a special designation?" "What designation?" Krivox asked warily. "Protected species," Jericho said. "And protector species. We acknowledge that humans come from an environment that shaped them for conflict. But we also acknowledge that they use those capabilities in defense of others. Let them serve as our sword against threats that diplomacy cannot resolve." The vote was called. It took 3 hours, multiple recounts, intense lobbying. In the end, 212 votes in favor. 88 against humanity was granted conditional council membership. Chen accepted the decision with a simple nod. No celebration, no triumphant speeches, just quiet acknowledgement after the session. Jericho approached her. "That was quite a speech, Captain. Though I must ask, will you always respond to threats with such overwhelming force?" Chun smiled. The expression was genuine but carried weight. "Ambassador, on Earth we have an old saying, walk softly and carry a big stick. We'll be your diplomats, your scientists, your explorers. We'll contribute to council culture and learning. But if something threatens innocent lives, if another species sends out an SOS, like Viltara did, then yes, we'll respond with overwhelming force." "That's what I told Krivox," Jericho admitted. "And what did he say?" "He said he finds that terrifying." Chun's smile faded. "He should. Because the capacity for violence is terrifying. But you know what's more terrifying? Having that capacity and refusing to use it when innocents are dying. That's not peace, Ambassador. That's cowardice." "Harsh words. True words," Chun corrected. "The Council spent decades building a civilization based on negotiation and compromise. That's admirable. But some things can't be negotiated with. Harvesters don't care about your ethics. They only care about consuming. Against such threats, you need beings willing to do what's necessary. That's why we need you." "No," Chen said firmly. "You need yourselves. You need to remember that civilization isn't just art and philosophy. It's also the willingness to defend.